What's up, YouTube? This is 82 and 0. Welcome back. I know it's been forever. Haven't done a video in a long time. I'm back. Just been working on music. Got a new album coming out soon. And just have been dealing with stuff in my personal life. But I'm back to making content. I'm going to continue to talk about the history of basketball. Just because I love talking about basketball. I like, educating about the history. And when you think about the greatest teams in basketball history, um, like my last video that I actually did was on the Washington Bears. But before them, there was the New York original Celtics. And many people consider them the greatest pre NBA team. Uh, Basketball was invented in 1891. It took a while for it to get off the ground. The rules were much different. Uh, got popular in YMCA's around the country. Eventually, it became a collegiate game, but there wasn't really uh, an established basketball league. There were leagues that tried the EBL, MBL, ABL. It's confusing, I know. So that's probably why the Celtics, I'm not talking about the current Celtics, the original Celtics, don't get a lot of love because none of those leagues are around anymore. And like the NHL, the NFL, MLB, those leagues have been around a long time. So earlier teams get, you know, their history added. But I want to talk about the New York Original Celtics. They have such a great history. Um, they were founded in 1914 and they went up until 1930. Um, so this team had a lot of the pioneers of the game. Nat Holman, who, for those of you who don't know, Nat Holman was one of the best players of his generation. And he's actually, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the first basketball player to get a basketball card made of him. I could be wrong on that, but that's what I know for sure. He was a NCAA champion coach, NIT coach champion. Uh, he coached CCNY from 1919 to 1959. He did this while barnstorming with the original Celtics. Uh, anyways, they had a lot of good players, not just Nat Holman, Joe Lapchick. Joe Lapchick was, pretty much the prototype center. You got to understand when basketball in this era, in the 1920s, was being played, they were figuring out positioning, how to play. Uh, I think the two best centers of that era were Tarzan Cooper and Joe Lapchick. And Joe Lapchick, uh, he coached at St. John's from 1936 to 1947. He actually coached the Knicks from 1947 to 1956. So, think about that because the Knicks made three finals appearances under him as coach. They didn't win any of them. I mean, I think it's interesting that Joe Lapchick, he died in 1970. And that was the year the New York Knicks won their first championship. He got to see them win it, but you know, wasn't coaching it. He's a four-time ABL champion, which the ABL was a very early attempt at a basketball league. That's who the original Celtics were playing under. Um, not we don't really have a lot of stats of these early guys. Just the era that they played in. We don't have a lot of it. It's just word of mouth. We have John Beckman played for them. Some people consider him like the Babe Ruth of basketball in that era. Um, Whole bunch of guys. But anyways, like many teams of that era, they were a barnstorming team, and they just kind of played who was ever in front of them. But check this out. In the 1921-20, this is just to show you their complete year by year records because when they were barnstorming, they bounced around leagues. So uh, there were some years that they weren't part of a league, if that makes sense. But in 1921-22, they were part of the EBL. Okay, and how that basketball league worked was the champions were they had two champions. Uh, the first half of the season was considered a champion, and the second half of a season was considered a champion. I know it's kind of weird, but they're technically the champions. Uh, 26, 27, they were champions. 27, 28 in the ABL, they were the champions. And this team was so dominant that the league actually broke them up and dispersed them because it just was not fair to the rest of the league about how good their team was. In 1926, the American Basketball League, developed by sports entrepreneur George Marshall, effectively railroaded the team into joining its ranks by prohibiting member teams from playing against them. The original Celtics responded by winning the next two ABL titles during their first full season in the ABL. Their dominance was so absolute that the fans in other cities took up the cry, "Break up the Celtics." We think about like the Warriors, right? People were saying when the Warriors got Kevin Durant in 2017, well, it's not fair to break the team up. Crazy how it goes back that far, 1926. In response, the league disbanded the Celtics and their players to other teams. They were absorbed into other teams. The strategy backfired, however, as the game's attendance plummeted. Further deflated by the Great Depression and ticket sales plummeted, the ABL folded in 1931. But they were the greatest team of that era, no doubt. Um, Later I would say Washington Bears or Harlem Wrens were the best, like as far as 30s, early 40s. But 1920s, the New York Celtics. So to kind of give you perspective here, I got the 1926-27 season. They went 14-3. And we don't have a lot of their stats, like I said. I did find some of their stats on Pro Basketball Encyclopedia, but it's very limited. So what we do know is that Johnny Beckman was their best scorer at 8.5 a game. Teams didn't score very much back then. Basketball was very low scoring in the 1920s. Um, Anyways, 27-28, when they were at their peak, they went 40-9. Um, their best scorer on the team that year was Davy Banks at 8.4. Sorry, I'm just reading these stats off here. 29-30, that the original Celtics went 5-5. That's when they were split up. But let me go back to what I was saying. Uh, they were the best team of that era, and um, the Boston Celtics, who were part of the NBA, they took inspiration from that name. This team was pretty popular then, and Nat Holman, for example, who I mentioned who played for them, he lived from 1896 to 1995. But one thing I find that's interesting is he wrote a lot of basketball books during his lifetime. And I remember, I'm a ferocious reader when it comes to basketball history. Uh, I remember reading when I was a kid at a library. Obviously, it's a reprint, it's not an original book, but it was a book he wrote in the 1920s called The Science of Basketball. And in this book, Nat Holman was talking about the best basketball players of that era. And what I think made the original Celtics so great is they weren't scared to play any competition. Basketball was very segregated back then, and a lot of these like just to be straight up honest, a lot of these white barnstorming teams, they wouldn't play the best black teams. But the New York original Celtics, they faced the Harlem Globetrotters, and the Wrens. Like, they weren't afraid to play anyone, and they had a lot of great respect for the black players. Like, Joe Lapchick said um, that Tarzan Cooper was the best basketball player he'd ever seen. They had a lot of great admiration for him. But people should go check out Scientific Basketball, not Science of Basketball. I'm sorry, Scientific Basketball by Nate Holman, written in 1922. You can find it on the Internet Archives if anyone's curious. I'll put a link to it down below. But so that's everything I got to say about the original Celtics. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. Where would you rank them? I mean, obviously, we can't necessarily compare them to the NBA teams that came later, much later. But it is good to see the pioneers who made this game, who made it what it is today. And without their contributions, we wouldn't have what we had today. So, we got to give them their flowers. And so